Joe Biden fielded questions on a COVID-19 vaccine, the Supreme Court, his record on police, criminal justice reform, and more. Ed O'Keefe reports.
Good to be with you.
Questions about the pandemic topped voters' minds at the town hall featuring former Vice President Joe Biden. For example, would he take a COVID-19 vaccine?
The body of scientists say that this is what is ready to be done, and it's been tested. It's gone through the 3 phases. Yes, I would take it. I'd encourage people to take it.
But would he mandate that all Americans get a vaccine?
It depends on the state of the nature of the vaccine, when it comes out, and how it's being distributed.
And would he force infected parts of the country into lockdowns?
You don't have to lock down if you're wearing the mask.
Under questioning by ABC News' George Stephanopoulos, Biden admitted again he's not a fan of expanding the number of seats on the Supreme Court, an idea growing in popularity among fellow Democrats as Republicans push through Judge Amy Coney Barrett weeks before the election.
Well, I'm not a fan. I didn't say it depends on how this turns out. Not how he wins, but how it's handled. How it's handled. I mean, it depends on how much they rush this.
But when pressed, he said he'd have more to say on the subject before Election Day.
So you'll come out with a clear position before Election Day?
Yes, depending on how they handle this.
Biden also distanced himself from some of his work on criminal justice reform as a senator in the 1980s and 1990s.
An awful lot of people were jailed for minor drug crimes after the
Exactly right.
Was it a mistake to support it?
Yes, it was. But here's where the mistake came. The mistake came in terms of what the states did locally. What we did federally, we said it was, and you remember, George, it was all about the same time for the same crime.
The town hall meeting capped an eventful day for the Biden campaign, which revealed that 3 people who travel with Biden and his running mate Kamala Harris have tested positive in recent days for COVID-19. But aides and doctors to the candidates determined that those 3 people weren't traveling close enough to them, and both Biden and Harris have tested negative for the virus. Ed O'Keefe, CBS News, Washington.
And for more on Joe Biden's town hall, let's bring in CBSN political contributor Sean Sullivan. He's also a national politics reporter for the Washington Post. Welcome, Sean. Great to have you with us. So let's begin with Biden's comments on the Supreme Court. He said the possibility of expanding the number of judges depends on the conclusion of the hearings for Judge Amy Coney Barrett, but she is all but certain to be confirmed. He also said voters will know his position before Election Day, despite millions already having cast their ballots. Why is he delaying a definitive answer on this?
Well, that's a big question right now surrounding the Biden campaign. You know, for the last several weeks, Biden's been asked this question over and over and over again by reporters nationally and in some of these swing states. And it's been a straightforward question. Do you support expanding the Supreme Court? And he has not given a direct answer on that. Now, what we know is that during the primary, when he was running against other Democrats, he came out against this idea. He was very firmly against it. He said it's not a good idea. We don't want to walk down that road. He's been a little more murky right now, and that has a lot of people wondering, you know, what is his actual position on the court right now. And so the new information that we got yesterday in this town hall was that he's going to say something more definitive about this situation before the election. What that is, we don't know, but he has been signaling, including last night, more and more that he does seem open to expanding the court or some sort of other reform. You know, some ideas Democrats talk about include, you know, term limits rather than lifetime appointments or other things to kind of place limits on the court. So Biden is opening that door more and more right now. We don't know what he's going to say, but the new information now is that people are going to expect him to say something more than he has said already.
Certainly interesting. The conversation around changing the Supreme Court has been going on for a while, so it'll be interesting to see how he adds to it. Okay, so Sean, at one point in the town hall, a voter in the audience asked Biden if President Trump should get credit for his foreign policy work. What did he say to that, and how does Biden's foreign policy agenda differ from the president's?
Well, he said Trump deserves some credit, but not that much. He pointed out that on Middle East policy, perhaps, that there's some credit due to President Trump. But when it comes to foreign policy, for Joe Biden, the argument that he's trying to present to voters is, look, I'll reset our standing on the world stage. I'll make us a respected entity. I'll restore the alliances that we've had. And I will not make America the laughingstock of the world. That's the argument that he is presenting. On the other side, you have somebody in President Trump who's saying, look, I've been strong. I've represented America's interests. I've taken a hard line against China. Those are the competing arguments we're hearing. But Biden, more than the sort of details of a country-by-country approach or a region-by-region approach, he's sort of presenting this big picture idea of, look, if I get into office, I know a lot of these world leaders. I've dealt with them over the many years and decades I've spent in Washington. I'll reset this country standing. Will be respected again. That's the argument he made last night. That's what he's trying to make to voters across the country right now.
And Sean, you know, what happened last night? Was it fair to the American public? I mean, what are voters losing out on by having both of these town halls on separate networks at the same time and not seeing these two candidates actually have to react to each other?
Yeah, I mean, you only get so many chances to see the president and the president's challenger directly confront each other, directly respond to questions in the same setting. It's just not the same to see two different candidates on two different networks. You know, they got a lot of the same questions. They were asked about the pandemic. They were asked about policy. But it's just not the same thing. And I think voters now, a lot of voters across the country are just now really tuning into this race in a serious way. They want to see these candidates side by side in the same room on the same screen. And the reality is it looks like we're only going to have one more chance for that to happen if indeed that debate does go forward next week.
And, you know, you mentioned the pandemic. We know that some members of the Biden campaign have tested positive for COVID-19. Can you tell us what the latest on this is and what precautions the campaign is taking?
Well, the latest is that there were two individuals who were within close proximity to Senator Harris. One is one of her aides. Another is a flight attendant who's not part of the campaign who tested positive for this virus. Now, there's no indication that Senator Harris has contracted it. She has tested negative. Out of abundance of caution, the campaign is saying that they're keeping her off of the campaign trail through the weekend just to be extra careful right now. And what we also learned yesterday was that there was an individual who had been flying on the same plane this week with Joe Biden, who also tested positive. That individual is not a campaign staffer. That was somebody affiliated with the aviation company that's been flying Biden around. And what the campaign said is, look, that person was not within a close proximity to Biden. They were both wearing masks. Biden has tested negative. So they don't feel that Biden needs to be put into quarantine as a result of that positive test. But what it does show is that even under very, very strict precautions, and indeed the Biden campaign has been pretty strict about adhering to these health protocols, even with those precautions, you have situations like this that arise. One thing the campaign is trying to stress is, look, we're not the Trump campaign. We're not the White House. We revealed publicly these diagnoses as soon as they happened. We responded. We're doing contact tracing. So they're trying to look at this situation, point to it in the campaign and say, hey, to you, America, to the voters, we're handling this very, very differently than President Trump and his team handled it when there was an outbreak at the White House.
All right. Well, Sean Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.